Hello, and today I'm going to play a Battle of Ebro 1939 Spanish Civil War, a game about decisive campaign of this conflict, and this is going to be my second playthrough of this game. I recorded another video sometimes ago about the first scenario from this game, and today I am going to play third scenario of this game. This game comes with 4 scenarios showing different stages of this campaign, and one scenario which is alternative scenario, allowing a Republican player to use more of his units, while today I am going to play scenario titled November. This is the last stage of this battle. You may remember from my previous videos that Republican goal was to capture Gandesa, to move forward onto the west, and to force nationalists to gather all their forces there to get some relief to the other fronts. Well, most of these plans failed. Republican forces failed to capture Gandesa. They weren't able to break through into nationalist positions, and they weren't able to rejoin all the lands which were controlled by the Republicans. The one thing they managed to do so was to force nationalists to bring more forces onto this front, and because of that they weren't able to continue their offensive operations in the other part of Spain. But after the initial successes of the Republican forces at the July, then at August, nationalists started their counter-offensive, and slowly, step by step, they drove Republican forces back into the line of River Ebro. This scenario shows the final stage of the battle. In this scenario, nationalist forces that are blue are pretty strong, and Republicans are fortifying their positions to keep their forces on the west side of the river Ebro, but this is going harder. Each side suffered heavy losses during this operation, and because of that many units are starting the game being weaker than they originally are. So this is going to be a hard battle for each side. For nationalists, because they have to attack well-prepared, fortified positions. For Republicans, because enemy has advantage, especially when it comes to the artillery. So this might be a tough battle for each side. This is a pretty short scenario, taking 6 turns only. Sorry, 7 turns. And as for victory conditions, nationalists gain 1 victory condition for each destroyed Republican unit, and they gain instant victory if there are no Republican units on the west side on the river Ebro till at the end of the game. As for Republicans, they gain 1 victory point for each Republican unit that remains on the west side of the river Ebro till the end of the game. And if there are at last 12 Republican brigades at the west side of the river Ebro till the end of the game, they are victorious. Any other result is a draw. As you may remember or not, an important part of this game are bridges. At each scenario, a Republican player has a number of bridges that he can place on the river Ebro and to use them to move their units or to head supply lines. In this scenario, the number of the bridges is limited to the 2 heavy bridges and the 4 light bridges. On the contrary, nationalist air force is pretty strong. For the first 4 turns of the game it has 10 points, the next 2 turns it has 9 strength points, and the last 2 turns it has 8 strength points. So nationalist player is allowed to use it to attack enemy positions or to destroy these bridges and to cut off enemy supply lines. So I think that's all when it comes to the introduction. We can start our game now. As you may guess, nationalist player has an initiative in this scenario. Here is the situation after the first movement phase of the nationalist forces. I know that most of the Republicans are well prepared for defense, so I decided to not run many attacks, but instead to gather a lot of my units on the few points and to push as hard as I can in these parts of the front. I also decided to move some of the battalions of the 105 division that are covering this flank. I hope that Ebro itself and the remaining units will be enough to keep Republicans on the other side of the river, while here I am going to run my attacks supported with artillery if possible, like here or there, or with more units like here. I hope it will be enough to push the Republicans back. So, this attack was a success. This is a town of Benifalet, and my entire 1st division that attacked here, supported by the elements of 84 division, managed to push Republican brigade on the other side of the river Ebro, which is a success. I also managed to push them back from Gandesa a bit, but I attacked on their weakest flank, but I believe that this position might be a tough nut to break. I am not sure if I will be able to push them off, so this might be a good idea to try to overrun their positions and to move onto the rear. I will see if it's possible. I failed to attack here. This Republican brigade proved to be a tough opponent. It managed to stay against my attack and even to weak one of my brigades. So that's all when it comes to the nationalist combat phase. As for Republicans, they had to retreat from this position because there was a danger of being overrun by nationalists, so they had to retreat from here and from there near this town Pinel de Brai, and to secure their only way onto their rear. We will see if these nationalist units will be enough to push them more. I tried to fire my artillery against the enemy, but I achieved little, and one brigade of this 42 division moved back to secure and enforce this position. So that's all for Republicans. I don't have plan to attack any nationalist units now. My goal is to stay as long as I can without much losses and to slow enemy progress a bit. So that's all for the day 1. I am moving on to day 2. This is turn 2, the 15th of November, and I continue attacking on this flank between Gandesa and Benifalet, since I think that using most of my strength and most of my available units here might result with breaking. I attacked these units with my bombers again, and this was a good idea because one of the Republican brigades was eliminated due to the attack of my bombers, and I moved some of the 3 battalions from the 105 division here to support my units all around. I also moved my available artillery to make these attacks stronger. I hope that thanks to this I will be able to force them to leave these positions, because if they will be in the danger of being cut off of their supply lines, then they will have no choice but to retreat. And here you can see that positions are pretty stabilized. No one is too strong to attack. I will try to attack here once more. I moved one more brigade to support this attack, so maybe I will be able to drive them back. If I will be able to do so, then I could even try a pincer attack from here and from there, and then they will all have to retreat, otherwise they might end being entrapped in the one big cauldron. Alright, so that's all for the nationalist. I feel I will be mistaking them often. That's all for the nationalist movement phase. Okay, we had a breakthrough here. This 101 Republican brigade was forced to retreat, and it was disorganized during this retreat. So there is a progress here, but sadly both here and both there Republicans are holding strong. They suffer some losses, but I still can't get any breakthrough here. Luckily, this position seems to be quite promising. So we are returning to Republicans, and this is their movement phase. I divided a brigade here near Benifallet into two battalions. One of them was left here and the other moved there. Its goal will be to help this retreating unit and to secure this position, otherwise these nationalists might endanger my flanks. Because of their success here, I had started to withdraw my brigades of the 11th Division to slowly moving in the direction of the Benisanet to not let enemy surround them. And this line seems to be pretty solid. I feel that here I might meet some problems. I strengthened my position here with additional brigade from 42 Infantry Division. So that's all when it comes to Republicans. Well, they can't be very active because they lack of reserves. Their position is pretty good, but if nationalists would be able to make a major hole in their position, then there will be a problem to find anything to fix such a hole. So that's all for the 15th of November. Okay, here is turn 3, after a movement phase. My air attack failed this time, but I gathered a lot of units here in the near the Pinelli, the Bray and Miravet. So my goal is now to destroy or maybe force to retreat, but retreat far away, this lone disorganized brigade. If I will be able to success, then perspective of cutting off some of these units from the Benisanet might be realistic. I am going to push them here with the support of my artillery, tanks and headquarters, so I think this might be effective. If I will be able to drive them out, I might use this strategic movement here, and it would allow me maybe to move even further. We will see. Here everything remains the same, and I am still trying to push here. So that's all for the movement phase. Okay, I achieved a success destroying this disorganized brigade and opening my way onto Benisanet. I am still trying to push here as well, but well, this Republican brigade had to retreat, but this not only kept its position but also managed to force my units to retreat, which is pretty impressive. I finally managed to destroy a brigade that protected right flank of the Republican forces. So now, despite some heavy losses I suffered here, I have my way open. I will see what I will be able to do so, because my major problem here is the terrain. There is a lot of hills with woods, and this is pretty rough terrain and hard to move for both infantry and even harder for mechanized units. Well, I have mostly infantry. here I haven't much of the mechanized units in this scenario. So that's all for the Republicans. For the nationalists, Republicans are doing their best to save their forces that are made to retreat onto the Benina Set. The problem is that the road here is controlled by nationalists, so they have to retreat to the woods and hills, which is pretty hard for them. And I want to keep my artillery in use, so I cannot move faster with it. A problem with this brigade is that it is probably already surrounded, and I should mark it already with lack of supply. I started to regroup my positions, my units from here, retreating some from this Fayon area to keep this line safe, because after the destruction of the brigade that defended this position, these nationalist units are capable to move here and cut off my units from this area. Well, they can still retreat on the other side of the Ebro, but I don't want to, because as you probably remember, in this game Republicans have to keep as many brigades as they can on this side of the river Ebro. I also moved one brigade from this position here. I hope it will be able to move somewhere here and to protect this hole that seems to be increasing on the Republican right flank. So that's all for the 16th of November. So we are in the 17th of November, and it was a nationalist movement phase. My bombers managed to destroy this bridge between the cities of Mora de Ebro and Mora la Nova. It was a heavy bridge for the artillery and mechanized units. So this artillery might have a problem to move on the other side of the Ebro, since the other heavy bridge is there. As for my units, I'm pushing harder. I'm trying to fight my way into this Benisanet town to cut off the quickest road for the Republican units to retreat and maybe to destroy them. Same goes here in the center. There is nothing. I am trying to keep these units busy with some of my brigades, and here I am trying to push these Republican brigades on the other side of the river Ebro. So the combat phase is done. My attacks on this Republican column were repulsed, and some of my units were forced to retreat. But what is more important, my spearhead managed to capture Benisanet, and this can be a hard thing for them, because now if they want to retreat, they will have to choose this road, since this part of the river is probably cut off for them for good. I was able to destroy last Republican defenders near the town of Corbera, so these units are now free to go wherever they want. And here I drove some Republicans near the town of Ribaoya down to the Ebro, and my idea of pincer attack might take more shape, I believe. Now, Republicans are still trying to retreat. These units moved here a bit, so they hope that they might reach this area of Mora de Ebro and Benissazes. We will see if they will be able to move here, but I think that these nationalists will be faster. So now the only way for them to retreat safely on the other side of the river Ebro will be this area between Ascot and Vinebere. We will see if they will be able to reach here. This line is going to break, I think, soon. Well, Nationalist doesn't have enough troops to push back these two brigades, but this big mass of the Nationalist forces will surely be enough to move like that. So I withdraw this brigade from this area to this to defend and protect this junction. I also moved one more brigade here to protect this part, because if they will be able to reach this area, then all the Republican forces on the other side of the river Ebro will be in serious trouble. So that's all for the 17th of November. This is 18th of November, and Nationalist forces reached the area of Moade, Ebro and Benisanet, and they are going to attack all the remaining defenders here. Nationalist Air Force tried to destroy this bridge near Asko, but failed. And as for the other parts, I am going to push harder. Finally, I am able to gather enough troops to attack Fattarella, sorry for this. I have some artillery as well, so maybe I will be able to break one of the last remaining fortified positions of the Republicans. And here I had to withdraw, otherwise they will be cut out of supply. So I decided to use all my strength here to drive this brigade on the other side of the Ebro before it will get some reinforcements that will help them to hold this bridgehead. Here we have a situation after combat phase. Nationalists' attacks were mostly successful. Benisanet is now controlled by Nationalists. Here they also were able to capture this junction and to push Republicans out of La Fattarella again. Sorry. So we are moving close to the Ebro. The only failure we had here, Nationalists suffered some losses but failed to drive these Republicans on the other side of the Ebro. Now, if I want to evacuate these units, I have to fight my way, because these hexes are in the enemy zones of control. So if I want to go through this road, and I want to, I need to fight my way through these hexes. We will see if I will be able to do so, since it's going to be the first attack of the Republican forces in this game. Here I am still defending. I hope my units will hold this position for a while. This brigade was the last one of these heavy fortified units that stationed here, but now it had to retreat on this hex. And I think that's all. I also fortified my positions here and strengthened my bridgehead on this part. So I hope that these nationalist units will spend their time trying to destroy this bridgehead, buying sometimes to the units that are close to these bridges. Well, this battle didn't go as I planned. Each side suffered some losses, but Republicans weren't able to make their way. So it might be dangerous for them later. So that's all for the 18th of November. We are moving to the 19th of November, which is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns, 6 turn of the 7th of the total turns. So we have only 2 turns to go. So nationalists are doing their best to not this group leave the board alive. I am going to launch 3 attacks from 3 directions. If this one attack will be successful against this already weakened Republican brigade, I might be able to cut off their way of escaping and to escape and to destroy this group completely. I strengthened my units here to try to get rid of them, but they are well fortified, they are in the heavy terrain, so this might be hard. I also used all my strength here to get rid of this nasty bridgehead, but again this can be a problem because they are heavy fortified and they are in the good terrain. These units fortified in the red fortification markers are in general pretty hard to get rid. You need to gather a lot of units, artillery, headquarters and so on, to force these units to retreat. Alright, this combat phase was interesting. My tanks made their way through this junction and pushed this brigade off, cutting a way of escape for the remaining units. My infantry was able to get rid of Republican headquarters and artillery, but these two brigades drove attacking units away. So they were successful in defense, but even so they are now cut off from the supply, so it will be a problem for them. In the La Fata Farella area, these two brigades were again able to drive my attacking units off, so they are doing quite fine, and I'm still unable to make any successful breakthrough onto the Asco area. As for fights for this bridgehead, my units suffered some losses and achieved nothing. Republicans have little to do, since they have only a few units left here. Still, they are slowly retreating onto the Asco, but they still try to slow enemy down. The problem is that this unit is disorganized, so it will have its strength halved if attacked in the next turn. We will see if this terrain will be enough to stop this massive nationalist group from the direct attack on Asco. They are out of supply for now. I think since this is going to be almost the end of the game, so they won't be eliminated because this lack of supply. And I hope at last they will keep some of the nationalist forces busy. So that's all for the Republicans, and we are moving into the last day of the operation. So here we are in the 20th of November. My air force tried to destroy this bridge in Asco, but again they failed to do so. So my goal now is to attack as many Republican units as possible with overwhelming advantage, hoping they will suffer some losses. I won't be able to reach Asco and to cut off all these lone Republican units of supply, but I think they might suffer some losses, so at last I will gain some victory points. So this is the situation after combat phase. Well, these two brigades suffer some heavy losses, so one of them was eliminated. Same happened here. My units also suffered some losses, but luckily none of them was eliminated. Here my attack was repelled again, but my tanks made some progress moving closer to Asco and driving this disorganized brigade away, but still it is unable for them to reach Asco directly, so this bridge is still in the hands of the Republican forces. So that was the last movement phase of the Republican forces. You can see that the area controlled by them is much smaller than at the beginning of the game. They are still controlling this small part near the river Ebro with two bridges, so they have an option to move on the other side of the river without being completely surrounded and eliminated. But even so, they suffered some heavy losses, and I think they aren't doing very well. Now I'm going to calculate the victory points to see who is going to win this game. Okay. Republicans lost 6 brigades. Nationalists lost 3. Of course, it doesn't count all these units that suffered step losses during the game. a lot of nationalist units suffered some losses, and all of the Republican units that are still on the board have one step lost. So this was quite a bloody battle, and none of the side achieved decisive victory, because nationalists weren't able to drive all the Republican units on the other side of the river Ebro, while Republicans weren't able to hold at last 12 brigades on this side of the river Ebro. So there is no decisive victory in this scenario, but nationalists won when it comes to the number of the victory points. So that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed such a way of showing you a playthrough without any counting, moving, and so just showing you how the situation changes. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.